Well, hello again, everybody. So this is the final event in the 2021 Ibrahim Governance Weekend. And as promised, I'm joined by the man himself, Dr. Mo Ibrahim. Now, Dr. Mo, I was listening very intently there to you with President Issoufou of Niger. Are you going to talk to me, by the way, because I'm not an engineer like you and him?
No, we appreciate all people, all intelligent people, and just making a point about delivery. And I think in government, delivery is important, get things done. And I was just saying, you know, of course I'm biased because both of us are engineers. And you said that engineering really is the art of making things work.
All right, so I'm the honorary recipient of the non-engineer engineering award,
welcome.
And that gives me the right to sit and chat with you.
You're
All
welcome.
right. So Mo, I've been with you throughout these 3 days, and really we've had a brilliant cast of some of Africa's brightest and best and youngest, and we've talked at the really, you know, looked at the real sort of hot button issues. So I wanted to share some of your reflections with everybody who's listening. And so our first forum, we had Jendai Frazier, of course, talking about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on Africa's health systems. So, you know, we've got to look at the 3 R's, I say, the response, the recovery, and the rebuilding when it comes to Africa's health systems. So just give me your thoughts on those 3 kind of bullet points, the response.
Right, actually it is a very rich conversation, and it was a very powerful cast we managed to get there. And we started with our friend Dr. Tedros, the managing director of WHO. We had Jendai, Gail Smith. I mean, it was very. It would be unfair if I try even to try to summarize what they said, and I suggest to all our friends who are listening to us, please go to YouTube and watch that session. It was very, very interesting. But it's clearly for us, we really need to invest in our health systems because we were caught short, and we have not invested enough. And actually, this applies to many countries, not only African countries. And that is a very important take about what happened. Vaccines, we need really to also be a little bit self-reliant. 98% of our medicine and vaccines are important. Then you have crises like this. And where are the vaccines?
Yeah. You know, the African Union has got this target of producing 60% of its own vaccines by the year 2040. That's not that long away, but as you say, it's less than 2% at the moment. I mean, do you think that's a realistic target?
It is very ambitious.
Yeah.
And I hope it can be done, but again, we need execution because the wish list is huge. The devil is really in execution, how to make that happen. And as I always said, really, if you want to really industrialize Africa or to try to produce our own essential stuff at least, first thing we need to look at is the single market. Yeah. Because how are we going to produce medicines if you have 54 countries with 54 different regulatory regimes? It doesn't work. You need one. Look at any businessman investing in this endeavor. The first thing you look at is the market. And I want to invest in a market of 1.2 billion people, not a market of 2 or 5 or 10 million people, because that's a limited market. People need to understand how businessmen think when they come to invest. So we need to strengthen really our continental free trade agreement to become a really an African common market. That would be a huge boost for Africa. And I hope that happens quickly.
Now, I heard you say something during the discussions on health about the fact that we don't have sufficient health personnel in Africa. And you mentioned the brain drain. And I actually know that there's this figure, which is between 2001 and 2015, that there was an increase of 60% in the number of health personnel who leave developing countries to work in OECD countries. And you know, the country where we were both born, the Sudan, really supplies so many doctors here in the UK, Nigeria, lots, you know, and so on. So there is this conversation now that actually Africa shouldn't be seen as a supplicant asking for support for its health systems and more vaccines, that actually it's a matter of recompense for all the doctors and nurses who work all over the world.
If there's any fairness, the first doctor actually who died in UK out of COVID was a Sudanese doctor. Actually, he was your
Related
cousin.
to me, yes, absolutely.
Right?
Dr. Adil Tayyar.
Yeah.
May God rest his soul. Absolutely.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it is a problem, definitely, the brain drainage, because the best leave. And there should be some form of recompensation. I mean, at some stage, I recall that there was a very good nursing school in, I think, in Malawi.
Yeah.
And the majority of the nurses actually worked for the
You're
NHS.
absolutely right, Mo. There was a saying about 15 years ago that there were more nurses from Malawi working in Manchester, in the north of England, than there were in Malawi itself.
It's a
And that's a
problem.
travesty.
Yeah.
So when Africa has this conversation about the vaccines and access and so on, the world should be mindful that actually the health systems in Africa are fragile because they've been deprived of the personnel who are saving lives in other parts of the world.
And that is the side of migration, which I don't hear anybody in the West complaining about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we've touched on the recovery, immediate recovery from COVID, but in terms of health, it's also an opportunity to really rebuild and really make sure that Africa's health systems are fit for purpose, not only for tackling COVID-19, but all the illnesses and, you know, afflictions which affect the continent. Is this an opportunity?
Yeah, yes. You know, Zainab, if something good come out of this pandemic really is the assertion of some facts. Suddenly we are all realized, we all accepted that health is really a vital public good. We never thought about health like that as an essential public good. Always the investment in health system was subject to well, if, but, and this, and not only in Africa, everywhere. I mean, you are based in UK, and you recall that actually salaries of nurses and health workers have been frozen in UK for so many years, and they are some of the lowest paid people. Yet Boris Johnson and his ministers and everybody will go out at night to applaud the health workers.
Yeah.
And what is this? You know, it's really hypocrisy, and we need to value those people who put their life on the line for all of us, and we need to offer them better paying conditions, not only in Africa, everywhere. I think we need to rethink about our lives. What are the important things in our life?
And we should, I'm sure, you back the idea that now we really should call on African governments to meet the commitments which were made 20 years ago in that declaration to commit 15% of their annual budget on health, and to date only a handful, if
only,
that, of
I believe 3 countries
Three
only.
countries, absolutely. So you really support the cause.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, again, as I said, we always do these wish lists, these commitments. We're going to commit 7%, you know, of our revenue for agriculture. We're going to support 15%, and we never do it. So we need to hold people accountable, actually.
All right, good. So there's an opportunity. The zeitgeist is here. We must seize that. Okay, so then we had a second discussion, which was David Pilling, the Africa editor of the Financial Times, was presiding over a conversation about politics and society in Africa and the impact of COVID-19 on those aspects. So what did you take away from that? Because there was a huge emphasis there on the youth of the continent, wasn't there?
Yes, I think that is a bright spot, really, the African young generation coming up, and I was very proud actually for the young people. If you notice, in every session, we had one of our young fellows and members of we have this network of young people who call it the Now Generation Network. And they were stars that they really shine throughout, which is really give me a lot of satisfaction that here's a generation coming which is much better than us, and we hope they do better for the continent. One thing we took also is democracy is under stress in Africa. And a lot of leaders took cover with COVID to really approach their people. We had some very bad elections. And there was a lot of elections last year. They were not really fantastic. We see this the space for civil society is getting narrower and narrower. I mean, and they are under attack in many countries. Many countries actually stopped NGOs from receiving any foreign support aid. When the leaders and the governments, they don't mind at all going and asking for foreign support. So I understand why the government, the presidents are very happy to get foreign support and foreign aid, but are not happy for their civil society to receive foreign aid. It's ridiculous. But it's part of the pattern of really clamping down on their people. So we should not use this as an excuse to limit the liberty of people. And that is really important. We have been worried about the situation of human rights and participation, democracy in Africa for the last 4 or 5 years, actually. In our index, in our statements, we always said, watch out. Africa had great economic success for 30 years of moving forward, and it's not enough that to say, okay, we're getting some economic success here, then I'm going to clamp on your freedom. It doesn't work like that.
And also, in terms of the impact on society, you talk about the role of civil society, but just looking at the issue of gender, I mean, you know, going back to the COVID-19 impact, we've had anecdotal evidence emerge now that where there are limited health supplies, that the men are getting preferential health treatment rather than the women. And, you know, a picture is beginning to emerge, and people are going to starting to try to collect the evidence to support this. But that really does just underscore the fact that progress on the gender agenda has really taken, you know, some retrograde steps. It's gone backwards, hasn't it?
Right. Zeinab, we follow very carefully the situation of gender and gender issues in Africa. And over the last 20 years, that's an area which there have been some progress, really solid progress. Of course, we're coming from a very low bar, actually. And, but there have been progress. I have not yet seen evidence or data about what happened during COVID. I mean, those reports of increased domestic abuse, not only in Africa,
all
over the place.
And girls being kept back at school more than the boys.
The boys,
so
there have been some, but we don't have yet really data,
the hard data
to speak about this.
Yeah. So, all right, that's politics and society. So what were your reflections on the conversation today that Uchu was moderating about the economy in Africa? Of course, we know it's the first recession in about a quarter of a century to affect the continent. And we've had all sorts of discussions about special drawing rights and how Africa's only getting about 6.7%. And, you know, the debt burden is increasing, the fiscal space is decreasing and so on. But yet, at the same time, people talk about this as being a time to perhaps reinvent the economic model for Africa. So I want to ask you, do you think that we are reinventing, is there a new paradigm, or is it just really implementing a blueprint that we've had in our hands for a very long time?
Right. Actually, there are two parts, I think, if I may,
yes.
to your question. First, about what our economies need now and what's essential. We need liquidity.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And unfortunately, I am not very impressed about the global solidarity, and things are moving very slow. The debt relief, or rather the postponement of the interest payable, have been very limited and very small. Forgiveness of debt, we didn't see anything happening there. SDR, very little is available for Africa. And SDR is not gifts or you know, it's just a way for countries to borrow cheaply. In Africa, it is very expensive to borrow, very expensive, and that's even if you could borrow. And while in the West, I mean, it's very cheap. That's why all Western countries are wallowing in debt. There are trillions of dollars have been borrowed in Europe, in the United States over the last 2 years, and more coming, because it's very cheap. And then they come also take the lion's share of the SDRs, which they don't need it. And so we're asking really to enhance that. And I had this conversation also during our event with the president of the European Council, Charles Michel, and we raised the issue, and we said, look, Europe, you are getting over 220, 250 billion dollars in SDRs. Europe, you guys spent trillions of dollars already. You are now giving $750 billion for your, and I did some calculations very quickly. You know, every European, every man, child, and getting over $2,200. When the Africans getting only like $26 or $27 per head.
Capita, yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
It is a travesty.
What he says is that they work in Europe to see how they can increase that to 100 million. That's important. And Monday and the day after tomorrow, I think they're starting the G7 meetings. The European promised that they're going to raise the issue and push to increase the lending of this SDR. So SDR shares for Africa goes from 30 million to over 100 million, which I hope it can get more, because it is possible to go to 200 billion, I'm sorry. It is possible without causing any problem to anybody. And it enables us to borrow cheaply, that's all.
Keep on saying it though, Mo, because I think a lot of people saying there's a double standard operating here, isn't there?
Yeah. And so we hope things will happen, and because you see, what I don't like is hypocrisy, okay? For a year and a half, I keep hearing all those world leaders, politicians, saying the same words. Nobody is safe until everybody is safe. This is a global pandemic. It has to be, everybody's saying that. Then the vaccine come, and we say, guys, where is our vaccine? Oh, sorry. Wait your turn, you know, it will come. But you're just saying nobody, but God said nobody is safe until everybody is safe. Sure. We will, nothing happening. Very, very slow. I understand that politicians, of course, need to win elections and need to show they are successful in dealing with COVID in their own countries. And they need, we say, fine, we understand that. At least give us some vaccine to help secure our health workers, for example.
But it doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen.
And as you know, Cyril Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, has talked about vaccine apartheid. But just sticking with the economy of Africa, you're quite right. There were two aspects to the point I raised with you. So just looking at the kind of, future economic blueprint for Africa, in rebuilding Africa, the third of the 3 Rs, do you think we should try and find a new model, or is it just simply making what we know we need to do happen? The integration, the trade integration, and all the rest of it.
Yes, crises are useful. Because crisis forces us to stop and think, what the hell are we doing? How did we get there? And the first thing we need to understand, we cannot continue to rely on a single commodity. I have a little bit of copper here, I have a little bit of gas here, I'll sell that and seek rent and just sit and use that. It doesn't work. We need to diversify our economy. So we are
We've
not,
been talking about this for ages and ages.
but crisis forces you
All
to
right,
act.
good.
Because suddenly I cannot export my because there is
Yeah.
no ships, there is no oil. Then what do? Then how to improve the links with your neighboring countries?
Yeah.
How to achieve food security? How to achieve security of medicines and vaccines? We need to work together, and we need to enhance our cooperation. Then we need to look jobs. Jobs are very important. Mining, unfortunately, does not produce jobs.
No.
So we need to think about how we get jobs. What is the value of e-economy? How can that develop
Right.
and if we develop green,
Yeah.
what that mean to jobs? And we need to think about this.
So-
And I hope there'll be a reset and we seek a new model for our growth.
They always say that in Chinese, the word crisis is made up of two symbols, opportunity and threat. So there's the threat, but there's also the opportunity.
This is beautiful.
Yeah, the opportunity, as you say.
That's
So
why,
we
because
hope-
China was run by engineers. You know, they produce the right
Oh, no,
slogan.
we're back to the engineers again. Okay, I'll go back to school and study engineering this time. So, Mo, it's been lovely talking to you, and I agree with everything you say, especially the thing about the youth, except, as you know, I've got 4 children, and I'm for the, greater empowerment of youth. But at my home, when my children are with me, I need them to do what I say. That's the only time that I'm not for the emancipation of the youth. So, Mo, look, it's been a terrific virtual weekend, of course, because of COVID restrictions. We've had to do it like this. And
Unfortunately, yeah.
hopefully, the next time we all get together, it will be in person. But to bring all these discussions together, there's been a lot of activity and behind the scenes.
We need to
so
thank,
many people have been
yes.
working in a really hands-on way. So do you want to
I
go
really would like to thank our wonderful panelists and moderators, and also have wonderful keynote speakers. We had Dr. Tedros from WHO, and we had Amina Mohammed from United Nations. We have Donald Kabruka as a keynote speaker. I'm also grateful for the participation of the UN General
Vera
Secretary.
Songwe was with us as well,
Vera
and,
Songwe.
and Antonio Guterres.
Antonio Guterres and the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
Yes.
Wonderful of her to come and
Yeah.
get involved with us. The chairperson of the African Union, Moussa Faki.
Yes.
We had a lot of really
It's a cast of
interesting people
thousands. It's
to come
wonderful.
on here. But all that would not have been possible really without all those people who did the hard work. We had the researcher who developed these wonderful documents, which I hope everybody can download. It's free. Download it from our website.
Yeah.
Really, it's a beautiful piece of research. I would like to thank the technical team who stitches this together.
Yeah.
Rebecca, who managed the events, and Robert, who managed the media, and above all, Natalie Delbalm, who managed all of us.
Yeah.
And then I thank you. You graced our events, and it's
Always
nice
a pleasure
to have.
to be with you, Mo.
It's nice to have some reality in our
Yeah,
shows.
I've got a pulse,
Thank you.
everybody. Yeah, but I mean, and on that note, I know your team have been working very hard, gauging responses from people who've been listening to the Governance Weekend. And I think just sum up for us, if you would, what the kind of mood has been amongst the people who've been listening, the delegates.
I think it's upbeat.
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 Yeah.
I think so. We'll get through this, and we'll learn our lessons, I think, and we need to develop a different Africa. We need to move forward. We need to be more self-reliant, not in a situation sitting there waiting for people to send us vaccines. We need to do our own vaccines. You know, what is the big deal? We need to trade with each other.
Yeah.
Self-resilience is important.
So self-resilience, self-reliance, self-sufficiency, greater domestic resource mobilization. So, Dr. Mo, you are not only an engineer, you're an engineer of hope.
Thank
so
you.
That's wonderful. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much
Zeinab.
indeed. It's been lovely having a conversation with you. And thank you to all of you, wherever you're listening or watching, to the discussions we've been having. It's been my pleasure being the Master of Ceremonies with all of you. And please do spread the word. And those who haven't really been listening to us live, it's all available online. So for me, Zeinab
Also on
Bedawi.
YouTube. We put everything
Oh,
on
everything's on YouTube. So
You
there
can
you
watch
are.
it also on
You can
YouTube,
watch
yeah.
and you can take notes, because really there were some really interesting facts and figures that are all there at your disposal. So from me, Zeinab Bedawi, here in central London, and from...
Mo Ibrahim, thank you very much.
And goodbye. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.